Okay, we'll call the meeting of the Plan Commission to order. I'd like to welcome everybody to the December 13th, 2017 meeting of the City of Lake Forest Plan Commission. I am Michael Lay, Chairman of the Commission, and I'd like to introduce the other members of the Commission who are here. To my far right is Commissioner Henry and Commissioner Berg. And to my far left, Commissioner Pickus, then Commissioner Ruggles, and Commissioner Kerr. Commissioner Freeman couldn't be here this evening, so we'll proceed with 6 of the 7 members. From city staff, Kathy Zerniak is here as well. So our first item of business is approval of the minutes from the November 8th, 2017 Plan Commission meeting. Are there any corrections or requests for clarifications? Seeing none, a motion to approve would be in order.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of approval of the minutes indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay. The main item on our agenda this evening is public hearing and action on the continued consideration of a request for approval of a special use permit to authorize the location of a Chase Bank branch and bank drive-through facility on the property at 884 South Waukegan Road. This is currently the McDonald's property. So at this time, I would like to ask whether or not any members of the commission have had any ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest on this matter. Seeing none, we can proceed. Okay, I'd like to swear in everyone who thinks they might want to speak on this issue, either pro or con. If you would please stand and raise your right hand, I'll swear you in. Thank you. Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you're about to give or have previously given is true and correct to the best of your knowledge? Thank you. Okay, I'd like to call forward the representative of the Chase Bank. Will the petitioner and representative of that be Mr. Krisoff?
It will not. My name is Bob O'Donnell. I represent Chase Bank, and I'll be making the opening presentation tonight.
Thank you very much.
With us here tonight, we have representatives of Chase Bank. We have our 2 architects. We have our landscape architect and our traffic engineer. So to the extent there are any questions from the Plan Commission that are better answered by the technical experts, if you will, they're available to answer those. But with that, I'll begin. As you know, this hearing is continued for September 30th, and when we last left you on September 30th, Chase was asked to address 3 principal issues. And before addressing those issues, and coming back here tonight, we were also invited to go before the Building Review Board. In just a moment there, before we went before the Building Review Board, we took what this Plan Commission had suggested to us at the September 30th meeting to heart. And in doing that, we initially hired a consulting architect to assist us in making significant modifications to the then design of the building and effectively redesign the building. That architect, in conjunction with our working with the owner of Forest Square, who we worked with, made significant modifications to the pedestrian connectivity, which was one of the charges to us following the September 30th meeting. And then the third thing that we did, and this is where I'll begin tonight, is we were asked to do some specific traffic studies, take some traffic counts at the 3 branch bank buildings in the immediate vicinity of the subject property. And we did that. I've put up on the screen, and really the first table, and this is part of the supplemental report that is included in your packet, but that first table are the traffic counts at the banks in the immediate vicinity of the subject property. And then the table immediately beneath it, those are the restated traffic counts that we took from area Chase banks, from which we made an estimate, an educated estimate as to the amount of traffic that we would project would be generated by the new Chase Bank if it is approved. The traffic counts of the area banks are what they are. I think the point that was, well, first, let me show you what we plotted that. And you can see on that first graph are the area Chase banks, and then the red dots, the two red dots are what we would project for the subject property. And then the graph below are we've charted the area banks and the traffic that we would anticipate for this Chase Bank is a higher volume of traffic than the existing banks along Waukegan Road. And frankly, we believe that the analysis would reveal that the Chase Bank, proposed Chase Bank, would generate traffic more closely aligned with what the ITE projections for a branch bank would be. And we understood the import of this request was to address the question of whether or not another branch bank is needed. I'll spend a moment with that because need of another branch bank or another hardware store, if we were proposing a hardware store, is not one of the criteria for a special use permit. The comment was made by one of the members of the commission last is that there is no guidance from our courts as to whether or not a city or a plan commission, if it were, could deny a proposed use based upon there being too many, or overuse, I think was the word that was used. Well, in point of fact, there is guidance from our Illinois Supreme Court specifically on that issue. And without getting into, in any way, shape, or form, a long legal discussion, the upshot of what the Supreme Court has held in that area is if there is a zoning ordinance which provides either a limit or a cap or even a moratorium on uses that would otherwise be permitted pursuant to a special use permit in a given zoning district, those are enforceable. However, in the case, this was a case involving a church sought to be built in a downtown business commercial district, and the municipality wanted to maintain the integrity of the commercial uses in that district and did not want a church use, which was permitted as a special use. All of the criteria for a special use were satisfied. Nevertheless, the village denied the special use permit in an effort to maintain commercial uses only. The Illinois Supreme Court rejected that decision as unreasonable. So the upshot of where the law sits is a municipality, like the city of Lake Forest, is permitted legislatively to limit the number of uses or to impose a moratorium on uses, but that is a legislative enactment. It is not something that can be done absent legislation that addresses that issue. And as we know, there is no cap, there is no limit, there is no moratorium in the city of Lake Forest on banks or branch banks. For example, a branch bank in this B1 district is an authorized use if one satisfies the conditions of a special use permit, which we believe that we do. Once those conditions are satisfied, this use becomes like any other permitted use in your zoning district and is entitled to be approved. If we were proposing, for example, a hardware store, which is a permitted use in the B1 district, neither the Plan Commission nor the city would be able to ask the question, well, do we really need another hardware store because we've got one across the street? That would not be a permitted question to ask, no more so than it is a permitted question or appropriate question to ask of this applicant, assuming we've satisfied all of the conditions of a special use permit. So we've answered the question with respect to the additional traffic counts. I believe those traffic counts are low, but I would respectfully suggest that exalting the issue of need, while it's certainly an appropriate question for any municipality to ask itself for any need. In this instance, since it is not one of the criteria for a special use permit, that it is not a criteria that should be considered in determining whether to grant or deny this use. The second question that we were asked to look at is pedestrian connectivity, and to see what we could do in order to increase the ability of pedestrians to move not only within and upon the subject property, but within the area, not only the retail uses that existed in the area, the business uses, and of course, the Metro train station. And what I've put up on the screen is the plan as it exists today, now, the revised plan. But let me show you, by way of comparison, where we've come and where we've come from. At the top on the screen, that is a depiction of where we were on September 30th when we were last before you. The specific improvements that we've made to enhance pedestrian connectedness are as follows. As you see right here, that is a sidewalk, a walkway. That walkway generally leads from the Metro train station. That walkway is an addition from what was existing when we were last before you in September. That's one addition. There is an expanded hardscape, bench and landscape area right where I'm indicating, which has been considerably enlarged and expanded from what existed previously. There is an additional hardscape, bench, and landscape area where I'm indicating here in roughly the southwest portion of the subject property. And then I believe there is one more such area located right in here. And you can see these sidewalks, and actually it's probably a little clearer on this. All of this represents enhanced areas within the subject property, but if we look at what we now are left with, what you see here in yellow is what exists, all of the pedestrian walkways, sidewalks, connections between this, for the most part, retail business area. All of that is now connected to the subject property. There are connections throughout. We connect to across the street, to the north, to the south, and of course to the west where the Metro train station lies. So and all of that was done not only by Chase and its representatives, but that was done in meetings with, certainly with staff, and in meetings and communications with representatives of Forest Square in order to provide that pedestrian connectivity that we understood that you were looking for. The third issue or charge that we were given, and that was to, as I recall the way the issue was phrased, is that under the general heading of adaptive reuse, if you were to remove the sign from the Chase Bank building, it would still look like a bank. So that spoke to the ability of the building to serve another use in the future should Chase no longer use it. Again, I think that we, and certainly before meeting with the BRB, we had undergone a significant change in design. What I've placed up on the screen here is the north elevation that existed when we were last before you. That's the same elevation. That's the same building as redesigned as was presented to and approved unanimously by the Building Review Board that we now have. The specific architectural improvements can be addressed if need be. All of that was gone through by the Building Review Board. But I think in terms of the visual effect and impact that this Plan Commission was looking for, I would suggest to you that this new design achieved it. And then here is simply the north elevation the before and the after, if you will. The before being what we had on September 30th, before you. The below is where we are, today. And then that being the north elevation, here we go. Here's the east elevation, the September 30th version. That same elevation as redesigned today. And then we can take a look here at the before and the after of the east elevation. And then moving forward, we have here the south elevation before, as of September 30th, where we are today, and then the comparison of one to the other. And then finally, we have the west elevation, the as of September 30th, today, and then the comparison of one to the other. And it is important to note, I know it was clearly explained for all of you in the staff report, but all of this was presented to the Building Review Board. The Building Review Board approved all of these design elements unanimously, and subject to certain conditions. All of those conditions require continued work with staff, which has been ongoing since November 1st. With that, I would suggest to you that we have, and hopefully you'll agree, satisfactorily addressed all of the issues that we were asked to address before completing this public hearing. If you have any specific questions about whether it be traffic, design, or any questions of Chase representatives, we're here to answer those questions. But with that, we would respectfully request that your positive recommendation be given this evening.
Could you just stay put there, please? It's McDonald, correct?
O'Donnell.
O'Donnell, thank you.
McDonald is what used to be.
Thank you. I knew there was a Donald in it. Kathy, staff comments?
Thank you, Chairman Lay. This matter is before you for the third time. I believe it was before you in August and September. And as was thoroughly reviewed by Mr. O'Donnell, you provided very clear direction on at your last meeting on what was to occur between that meeting and the time this came back to you for final approval. You do have detailed findings in your staff report. As was mentioned, the Building Review Board not only unanimously approved the design, but commended the work and felt that it related very well to Forest Square, and really complimented the petitioners and the architects for bringing forward a strong project. You do have a few conditions in your packet, in your staff report. One, the Building Review Board did defer consideration of lighting and signage until the building takes shape. The Building Review Board always prefers to actually see a mock-up, understand the size of the sign and how it relates to the building. So if this moves forward from the City Council, we will be working with the petitioners at that time to come back before the Building Review Board on those items. Similar to what occurred when the Levels Restaurant transitioned to a non-retail use, we have already entered into discussions with the petitioners, and prior to this going to the City Council, we will work with the council and the petitioner and bring forward a proposal that really allows the property owner and Chase Bank to contribute in some way to the continued enhancement, landscaping, support for infrastructure in that area. So that's not a matter for the Plan Commission to get into specifically, but the last condition does simply acknowledge that that discussion is going to occur. We do recommend action this evening since this is before you for the third time. As with all petitions, your action would be a recommendation to the City Council, and we would anticipate this matter going before the City Council probably about the middle of January with both the recommendation from the Building Review Board and your recommendation at the same time. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Questions of the commission for either petitioner or staff? I'll start out with just a couple brief questions. Mr. O'Donnell, in looking at those we had compared them. Mm-hmm. The new design implies larger dimensions. Is that truly the case, or are dimensions comparable?
They're the same.
Okay. Very
Yeah,
good. 'Cause
and that's simply, and that's about as far as I can go on the architectural questions. But,
No.
but that was something that we recognized, that visually, when you look at what we're comparing, it looks like a bigger building. It's not a bigger building.
Yeah, okay. I didn't think so, but I just wanted to make sure. A second question, the pedestrian walkway, at least in what was presented to us, it was shaded in kind of a blue legend.
That one?
What will those be paving stones, brick, concrete?
I believe what we're looking at, and I think this is the drawing that you're referring to,
Yes,
Mr. Chairman.
it is.
I
It is.
believe what we're looking at here is essentially sidewalk.
Okay,
I think that's essentially the sidewalks that will connect to the existing sidewalks to connect properties and facilitate movement between properties and across the street.
okay, thank you. Other questions?
No questions.
Well, I've got a new train of thought since we met last, because I go by this site quite a bit. I recall when we reviewed the petition for the Forest Square, and we were very pleased with the design that Rick came up with the idea of a kind of a town center for the west side of town. As I frequent that shopping center, and I always end up wanting to go north after I go there, I find it's kind of a convoluted series of turns. I go down to the light there, that's just south of your parcel, to get back on Waukegan Road. There really isn't.
Right in here?
No, actually, if you go up with your
Right there.
point up higher, yeah. And pretend to go into the shopping center, actually, go north a little more. Now turn in right there, and if you go in there, you can only really go in from either direction and exit only south. You can't exit and go north from there. And it's a little dangerous. Sometimes people kind of have to second guess what they're doing. So when you go in there, in order to get out to go north, you have to kind of snake around the back side. So if you move to the left with your cursor, go down. Now you see how your pedestrian lines show a continuance to the south? It'd be really nice if that road actually continued south, past the edge of your property, right straight down to that little civic plaza that we have by the train station drop-off.
Right here is where you're.
Yeah, you know, and this is an idea that I had kind of floating in my head last time we were together, and I hadn't really developed it, and it's just kind of come to me. And I know that we're getting near the end of this petition, but I'm wondering if there's maybe time for you to have a conversation with staff about that, because there's three different entities here. There's the city's train station and that little square that was developed first. And then McDonald's went in, and they did their thing. Then Forest Square went in, and so because they've kind of were done at different periods of time, I don't think a clean sort of vehicular route was really kind of had a chance to come to reality. Right now, when you go down from Waukegan Road on that little greenway and take a right turn, you're kind of shushed down along the tracks to the alley behind Forest Square. So if from a standpoint of we're a planning commission, this is about the only forum where this is going to come up. And I don't want to make this a requirement of approval, but I'm just thinking that this is the time for people that think with vision to go, okay, city, this isn't really working with, the Chamber of Commerce is always looking for ways to promote shopping, particularly for even people from out of town. Come to Lake Forest, shop here, maybe you'll want to live here, and so forth. And going in that shopping center and having to go around, especially at night, and find that magic way out to go north is pretty difficult. I've been able to find it. And also when you go in, it's the same thing. I'm just wondering, since you're in the middle, you're in a position to kind of renegotiate. I even have a diagram I played with because I thought, boy, when I was out there last, that edge condition on Rick's facades there goes straight to that turnaround at the train station. And boy, if you could just shoot straight through there. Maybe there's a way for the property owners in the city to kind of have a everybody wins resolution. I see you shaking your head, so did you notice that sort of a?
Certainly. Tim Messick with the Architects Partnership, we're the architect of record, working with Chase Bank, and appreciate the comments, definitely. We have taken a look at that condition, and we've actually had design charrettes to review that exact layout and how we connect the two properties in a safe, efficient, and direct way. We've met with the adjacent property owner, received feedback from their management group on how we can connect these two properties. And it really comes down to a pedestrian, vehicular, and design aesthetic component. So those three components. And we ended with the plan that we did. We did have a direct connection similar to what you have pointed out as a possibility. And why we landed where we did is it's actually a calming component of slowing that traffic down in a way where we're managing the traffic. There are a number of components on the west end of the current McDonald's future Chase parcel that we've tried to accommodate the design intent of the code, along with the needs of the end user, along with the needs of the public accessing both properties. You'll see, and if I can back up to the site plan, the proposed site plan, we have the public open area to the west end of the proposed bank branch, which is a kind of a general gathering spot. That area exceeds the square footage requirements of the zoning ordinance, but we've actually redesigned that area in such a way where we took out 7 parking spaces that had previously been located there. You'll see it on the before plan just north of that public open area. And what we've done is that it allowed us to have pedestrian traffic move through the south portion of that overall kind of corner in such a way that is safe and convenient. So as pedestrians come from the train station, come up and come to this area, they have the option to come to the Chase Bank branch and complete business. They also have the option to proceed north, which aligns directly with the shopping center pedestrian plaza in front of the retail stores. And it's a scenario where we've tried to create a traffic flow that interrupts the pedestrian traffic the least amount possible, as opposed to bringing that traffic further down south into this area where we do expect bank customers to park in this area and then employees over in this back area. So we've set up a pedestrian zone. We've set up a drive-up customer zone, and then an employee zone working off of the back property line in an efficient way to address what we feel is really threefold as far as the design considerations. It is a concern on how to best utilize all of these different movements together in a way still maintaining the cross-access, which is very important to the north property, the use of the drive-through that is south of the branch in a way that is safe and secure, and then allowing these different modes of traffic to coexist along with the tertiary bicycle traffic, which there may not be as much, obviously, but we've allowed for that as well.
So you've looked at it. Sounds like you've done a lot of consideration.
In depth with many different entities, engineering side, landscaping, architecture, layout. We've had many discussions, many designs, and we feel that the design presented in front of you tonight is the culmination of all of those efforts.
If I may, maybe some of this could be accomplished with some well-placed signage, kind of indicating the path, how to get out. Just a
As far
thought.
as the vehicular traffic?
Yeah. I mean, we don't have a signage plan, so maybe that could be incorporated just to keep a more a regional perspective here rather than just the property itself? Think about the traffic coming from the north there as well?
We'd be open to, as part of our formal signage approvals at a later date, in presenting additional information for directional signage, and then working with the property to the north to establish a safe and efficient way to sign those areas.
So if I understood your answer right, the process you went through was looking at vehicular traffic, the pedestrian requirements, and then the plaza area at the west end of the building, so that there wasn't, let me put it this way. It appears to me as few conflicts as possible while meeting your three objectives.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, that is accurate.
But with the roadway in which, you're at the Japanese restaurant coming south, and then you make that little right turn, then a quick left turn coming down, that would, for vehicular traffic, that would remain virtually unchanged, or is there some?
We're correct. It would be unchanged from current day movements to get from the North Shopping Center site
Okay.
through our redeveloped site to the end of the turnaround at the train station.
So it looks to me like the pedestrian connectivity seemed to have ascendancy over the vehicular, if the vehicular wasn't changed.
That's correct in that whenever you have pedestrian and vehicular, it's how do you calm that traffic so that you don't have a raceway effect? Where if you're up at Starbucks to the north and you're coming down this 2-lane connector, if it's a straight shot, obviously you have pedestrians coming and going through that parking lot, and while you may have a movement that restricts or directs traffic, it actually calms it to a certain extent, which is what we struggled with at the front end of this property as well, with the right in, right out off of Waukegan. We have pedestrian connections that, working with staff, the BRB, and our engineers, we've created the sidewalk on the north property line, re-landscaped that area so that we have a safe, convenient way for pedestrians to come through our site and then connect on to Waukegan, whether they're coming north or south, their start or stop points. And we've tried to create that as a separate zone in a safe and convenient area, and stop traffic with these pavers, where the majority of this is concrete sidewalk, but we have these areas here in the asphalt drives that are actually separate brick pavers that announce the pedestrian zones, and it's another way to have a calming device where people are aware, they understand that people will be walking through the site. So we've tried to announce where those zones are, set them up in a way that's safe and convenient, and then allow the vehicular traffic to not dominate, but still coexist. So we didn't take precedence to vehicular from the safety aspect.
Okay. Further questions? Okay.
I just have one. You referred to bikes, and in an earlier meeting, I asked Mr. Kristoff if you were doing lead standard. He said no, but something similar. Are you, and you mentioned bikes, and we do have bike traffic around there. Are you intending any bike racks?
Yes, we do have bike racks that are part of our design. So they will be located near the Chase Bank building. And I believe they are back, back in this area right here. So it's on the pedestrian thoroughfare through the site, and it's bike parking that's separated out. And then to the point of building green, we do have low-flow fixtures, we have the reflective roof, higher insulation values, so there are a number of elements that we've designed in. We do not anticipate proceeding forward with LEED certification just from a life cycle value standpoint. We're putting the value into the building, not necessarily into the piece of paper.
My only other concern would be on the adaptive reuse, which, this was raised in an earlier meeting too, that you'd be reducing it to two 1,800 square foot stores. It really looks like the building would be suitable for one more tenant, but perhaps not two. I see that you have made the second story a real second story, although not complete, which may help. But that's certainly something that's of concern to the city.
Definitely, and working with the third-party design architect on the redesign, we've set up four-sided architecture that allows for punched openings on four sides of the building. So depending on square footage requirements, it can be separated into two 1,800 square foot spaces. It could be smaller spaces if they're smaller retail tenants. By punching openings to the north, obviously, where our entrance is, but also to the south, if the drive-through would be redeveloped and it becomes a landscaped area with an entry towards the south for multiple 3-4 tenants, you could create an entrance on that side, as well as the east and west, where you could have the ability to do punched openings for end caps, if you will, for additional tenants. So we believe there's flexibility for future design, not only from a massing, material, and kind of layout standpoint, but also internally on how those are situated and give the most flexibility as possible. The other thing that we're doing is the mechanical units are inside the building on a mezzanine. In theory, you could create that second floor with additional structure. Now it's usable space, it's a very small amount, so I don't know that you would get the impact from the user, but pending who would be looking at redeveloping the property, that's feasible to create that second floor.
So the second floor is primarily to store the mechanical equipment? Because there were some issues raised with the building review board on that.
Correct.
Okay.
You'll see from the roof massing, what we've done is at the top of that roof parapet, there's actually a sunken pit that allows for the mechanical units, condensing units, to be located up on the roof. And we've worked with the BRB on making sure that you were not able to see that from the metro stop, any pedestrian areas. So it would appear as one solid roof element, although we know that there's louvers on top that will be hidden for fresh air intake and exhaust. And then the air handling units would be tucked in behind those second floor dormers.
So the only comment I would have is a concern for an adaptive reuse, the visibility for more than one tenant on Waukegan Road. It seems well suited for visibility for one tenant only.
I would agree. It's set up for an end cap. If you envision the shopping center to the north as it curves towards Waukegan, you have the end cap for Starbucks.
Okay.
It would be a similar scenario where you have that one end cap tenant that has the most visibility, and then as you get off of Waukegan, you have a little less visibility, but part of the overall design of the center. So it's much the same as creating that U, if you will, connecting the two properties in a massing standpoint. So-
But that space is always tough to rent in the crotch anyway, so.
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you. I mean, I appreciate the efforts. We have had the Building Review Board minutes as part of our package tonight, and I see you did spend a lot of time reviewing it with them.
Okay, if there are no further questions of either petitioner or staff, we can move to the public testimony part of our meeting. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the commission on this item? Can I swear you in, Dan? Yes. Okay. Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you're about to give or have previously given is true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Please come forward. Please provide your name and address, please.
Okay, thank you. Dan Sebald, 560 Ivy Court. So, as I've learned more about this project over the last couple meetings, I've come to dislike it more and more. So, at this point, I'd prefer that it just be outright rejected in its current form. And I'd like to just kind of recap the situation with my thoughts on that. So what you have is there's a franchisee, McDonald's, who couldn't reach a lease agreement, a land lease agreement, because it was expected, he didn't want to close, and they negotiated, and this person has got just decades of experience. So it's no question that it wasn't viable. But one of the points of emphasis there was that there's going to be a McDonald's in Bannockburn that would impinge on McDonald's in Lake Forest. And then we learned in the next meeting, the follow-up, that that franchisee was offered the franchise in Bannockburn, which is a typical thing I think that they do, which he declined. But we learned that that franchise was opening because it was expected the one in Lake Forest would not be able to afford the rent. And that has a sort of reductio ad absurdum or circular argument to it. And it's just like setting up dominoes. It just takes for the city to okay the project and then it'll go forward. So that's one of my main concerns. So it's not any kind of collusion or illegal or anything like that, but it lacks a certain good faith. And it's put the city in a situation that's a kind of difficult situation, trying to meet the goal of a community-oriented building. So there's that aspect of it. Now, if you were to okay this, might you expect a similar situation to happen in the future? People see the way that this one moved through the commission meetings, et cetera. Might the same thing happen again? I don't know. If you do agree to this, you'll have another bank there, and if 2 years down the road, another bank in the area closes because of too much competition, then the neighborhood's really not going to be happy about that. But the big thing is that this building, it doesn't fit the goal here of community-oriented development. It's too small for the lot. You're going to have an underpass, pedestrian underpass, so in the future maybe there'd be ample parking for a restaurant, an evening restaurant that could use the parking, the train depot parking in the evening when it's open. You could have 2 stories and on the lower floor have 2 small retails, maybe a small bike shop, maybe one of the restaurants across the street, which do not have much space, would be interested in a larger building closer to the train depot. You could have a breakfast restaurant. And the idea would be to capitalize on this train depot and build something a little more community-oriented. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else from the public here wish to make a presentation? Please come forward and identify your... Let me swear you in, too. Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you're about to give or previously given is true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
I do. Steve Douglas, 460 Washington Road. I'm here representing the owners of Forest Square, and as I've said in previous meetings and also at the BRB meeting, we're in support of this petition. We think that Chase Bank will be a strong draw to the area and will benefit not only our retail tenants, but also those across the street at Sunset Corner. And I especially appreciate the petitioner's willingness to take another look at the design at Mr. Berg's suggestion in the last meeting to make it more compatible with Forest Square. I think Mr. Swanson did a great job of that. And so not much more to it. I've said it all before, but we're very much in favor of it. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to address the commission? Seeing none, we'll proceed to final questions of the commission members to either petitioner or staff, or to provide further direction to the petitioner or staff, or request for additional information. Seeing none, what is the, Kathy, do you have any response to the public testimony?
I don't have anything to add.
Thank you. Commission discussion and comment on the matter before us.
Well, I'm pleased that the petitioner has listened to our thoughts about trying to make this work in unison with the Forest Square. I think that that's a positive move, and I think that this would lend itself to future tenants better than the other building. And I still am a little concerned about a last-ditch effort to try to straighten out that vehicular circulation. I think it would probably benefit to have that a little bit more straight line routed, perhaps stop signs, they work pretty well. Maybe one discussion more with the city about that would pay some dividends, but I'm in favor of the petition as I see it today.
I will echo those comments, and I'll say that I think that they followed our direction very well. I think the redesign of the building is excellent, matches Forest Square well. I think they've taken our concerns to heart, and I believe that it meets all the criteria that's before us for a special use permit.
Yeah, I'm also in favor of the petition. I think the new architectural style is well in keeping with adjacent developments. I think it could be adaptable to all sorts of different various uses, and the connectivity with the pedestrian walkways, I think, is a great improvement from what is there currently. And the traffic going around the back is a bit of a concern to me, but I do feel that the petitioner made a point for slowing that traffic down by it not being a straight shot was something that had some merit.
I wanted to thank Chairman Notes and the Building Review Committee, as well as the petitioner, for all the work to improve the design. I know there are some folks in the Fourth Ward who have not wanted another bank. However, I think it's a benefit to have a national bank with a strong credit rating like Chase. And McDonald's, while it seemed to be well-loved by folks, was considered a destination. And I would just suggest that I don't typically go just to a bank. Sometimes someone will run to an ATM. But I will group my errands, and I believe that having Chase in this area may very well lead to ancillary trips to a Starbucks, to Sunset Foods across the street, or the hardware store, and with the pedestrian connections, may lead to a little more life being seen in that area.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the commission? We have the staff report before us recommending approval with the conditions specified. Conditions are on pages 5 and 6 of the staff report.
I'll make a motion that we approve the petition as submitted in its current form with the recommendations that are listed in the staff report, with one minor change, condition number 2, regarding the second sentence regarding tree removal, subject to review and approval by the city arborist, shall be limited to trees that do not provide screening of the drive-through area. It was just a typo there.
Second it. Okay, it's been moved and seconded approval as recommended by staff with the conditions outlined in the staff report. Further comments? If not, we'll ask for all those in favor of the motion to approve indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 6 votes to no votes. 6 to nothing. It is approved. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. O'Donnell, all members of the team. Appreciate your working with the city on that, and good luck here with the council. Okay, I would now move to the item, opportunity for the public to address the Plan Commission on matters not on the agenda.
I would just note, we would like a continuance on the Oak Knoll Woodlands matter.
Thank you,
The
Kathy.
neighbor for the attorneys did request a second continuance. Rialto, the developer, did agree to that, so it would be appropriate for you to consider a motion to continue.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and seconded that we continue the public hearing and action on item number 4 on the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
That was so quick, I missed who made the motion and who made the second. Who offered the second?
Second. Okay, Kathy, do you want to talk about the Plan Commission meeting schedule or anything else?
Just the meeting schedule. You do have a proposed meeting schedule for 2018 in your packet. I don't believe there are any dates that differ from your normal second Wednesday of the month meeting. As we always do, if there are no items, we would cancel the meeting, and we would certainly make sure we have quorums, and if necessary, reschedule. But this would be the schedule that we publish, at least going forward, so petitioners have an idea of what to expect. So if this is okay, then a motion to approve it would be appropriate.
I just had one question.
Sure.
We ran into an issue in 2017 where we didn't realize it was tentative, and so it does say draft. And when will the final be put out?
If you approve a motion this evening approving this, then we will send this out in final form.
Okay, thank you.
I move
Okay,
that
is-
we approve the calendar as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that this meeting schedule, saying draft November 22nd, be approved as submitted. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The 2018 schedule is approved as submitted. Okay. Less than an hour. Motion to adjourn is in order. It's been moved and
Second.
second. All those in favor of adjournment indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion to adjourn is carried. Thank you all.